Hi, everybody. This is Mastery again with Bill Crespo. We're here in Nashville, and we're here with Andrew Flachneer. You've probably read about him. You've probably heard about him. Fascinating story. He is a genius when it comes to his internet and what he does about technology, digital technology. He lives in San Francisco. So Andrew, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell us your story because I want to go to all the stuff you've done. But you got into real estate when? How old were you when you got into real estate?
So I was 17 when I started studying for the license exam. I turned 18, began selling homes at Keller Williams in Southern California.
Cool. And then did you have a team? Was it by yourself?
It was on a team, actually. So the way it worked is I found the top agent team in my city and knocked on his door and said I want to be part of his team. And he said, "Hey, Andrew, you can be my intern." And I said, No, I don't want to be your intern. I want to be an agent for you.
Yeah.
And I think at the time he had 3 or 4 agents. And I said, "Hey, I want to be one of them." And with enough persistence, he let me through the door and began selling as part of his team.
And then how long were you selling for?
So I was selling through the remainder of high school, which is really only a few months, and then began selling while I was in at university in San Luis Obispo. And then from there, sold a little bit while simultaneously starting a few companies in Silicon Valley.
So wait a minute. Okay, this is what's really cool. Okay, you started companies while you're in school, high school, or college? Both.
Yeah.
All right. How did you do this? So how did that all happen?
Well, I think in high school, I was lucky enough to live under my parents' roof, and that made it possible to start businesses, take risks. While I was in college, I was selling some real estate, making some referrals, and that helped float the boat while I was doing some business, which is risky, right? Being an entrepreneur, you're taking a big leap of faith, and you don't have a predictable income.
Yeah.
And then after school, it's a bit of a longer story there, but I was selling real estate to help offset the risk of starting Real Scout, but also a few companies before that.
So do you were you inspired by somebody that got you to the point that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm inspired by a lot of entrepreneurs who are in my life. I think a couple folks who had the biggest influence on me. One of them was an entrepreneurship professor, which I felt pretty fortunate to have a professor at my university teaching entrepreneurship. Because it is a skill. It's not just the luck of the draw, or it's not like hitting the lotto. You actually need to apply a certain practice and methodology to starting a company. But also Paul Orfila, who is the founder of Kinko's. Ironically, when I was in high school, I applied to have a job, a minimum wage job at Kinko's, and I got rejected. But fast forward a few years, and I took a class with the founder of Kinko's. His name's Paul Orfila. And he, taught me that entrepreneurship is a viable path outside of university. And it's interesting because school teaches us to check in, check out, clock in, clock out, bring your lunch pail to work. And he has some very strong views about that not being the only viable path forward. And so that did, give me a little bit more confidence to pursue entrepreneurship after graduating.
Okay, so he got rejected and then stopped doing something. Guys, hear this, okay? So you got rejected, but you kept going because you had a desire, you had a dream.
Yeah, I mean, I got rejected from helping people flip copies at Kinko's. I didn't keep persisting on that goal, but my vision changed for what I wanted to pursue, and it was kind of ironic that the founder of that company, the founder of Kinko's, actually urged me to become an entrepreneur instead of trading my time for money.
That was so cool. So then your first product, or when you were starting to put this all together, was what? What was your first product that you came up with?
At Real Scout or before that?
Before that.
Okay, so before that, a friend of mine approached me and he said, "Hey, my family has a small business in San Diego. We help public schools with generating some extra revenue by putting healthy food vending machines in their schools." And at the time, there were 2 Senate bills in California that kicked out junk food vendors like Pepsi and Coke.
Right.
And so it was a really great opportunity for us to come in with a fresh product, no artificial ingredients or preservatives. We had healthy food, healthy snacks for students.
Right.
And I ended up becoming a co-founder of that business so that we can grow it and scale it. We had countless machines across many locations from San Diego through San Francisco, and that was really the first main foray into entrepreneurship after college.
And that went well.
Yeah, it went well. We sold it to a major UK conglomerate that owns and operates Canteen vending. You've probably seen their trucks around town.
Yeah.
So Canteen now owns this company and all the assets. But it was a wild ride. I think it taught me a lot about entrepreneurship and also how important it is to be on the front lines of your business, because I was literally, restocking the vending machines, driving around town, putting Cliff Bars and Pop Chips and Pirates Booty and Arrowhead watering these machines.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they approach entrepreneurship, they think about what this business should look like in 5 or 10 years, and they think about themselves, managing a fleet of trucks, and if they're above the menial work.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big mistake. It's important.
So when you sold it, did you ever how much did you pull back when you sold it? Like were you like now managing the entire operation when
No, you know what? It was a clean deal where, as soon as we sold the company, we were out. And so we were no longer operationally involved. It's every now and then we'd, stop by, one of the locations to check on the machines and just have a moment of
How old were you when that happened?
I must have been 22.
So after you sold it, did you go, woohoo, man, you guys must have high-fived it and said,
It's always bittersweet.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think there's a lot of intrinsic motivation in being an entrepreneur and building something great and serving customers, and to see your baby go to,
so you guys were attached to it.
Yeah, we were attached to it. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that, you see a lot of entrepreneurs who, after selling their companies, not that this was a massive financial outcome for us,
right.
But it's always a bittersweet moment. And so I think that, we had some time afterwards, some introspective moments, what do we want to do next? What do we learn from this this venture? So
your mind's, I'm just kind of going back to your mind's clicking. You sold this thing, your mind's clicking. I just want to figure out, how did you get into the dating thing?
So it's funny because I think dating and finding a right home actually have a lot in common.
Yeah.
We could talk about that. But generally, my current co-founder at Real Scout, at the time he was single and he was on dating apps. And dating apps, while they've come a long way, it's still a big risk to sacrifice one of your weekend evenings to meet a stranger, because sometimes it goes great, most of the time it doesn't. And then you are held hostage at this dinner or on this date. And so he was thinking at the time, my friend, she's single too, and she's on these dating apps, and she's having these terrible dates. Why don't we have these terrible dates together and hopefully find a great partner in the process? And so it was actually a double dating website. And the way it would work is that you and I, so it was the first of its kind. You and I, as friends, would form a joint profile, and then we'd look for another duo to date. So it made online dating a lot safer, a lot less awkward, a lot more social. Even if we did have a bad date, it would be a good story.
Yeah.
But
you're not alone.
And it's easy to break the ice with more than just you and a stranger. So we pursued that. It was eventually acquired by the former Match.com CEO. And from there, we helped him on a project, and then, Real Scout came into the fray.
So then you found a gap in real estate. You found a hole.
Right.
What was the hole that you were filling?
Well, when I was selling real estate, I realized that it's almost like entrepreneurs completely skipped over agents and brokers when they develop their products or when they raise capital. And I think it's because most entrepreneurs, they have a pain point and they try to solve that pain point. The pain point was buying a home or selling a home is a pretty sucky experience. And so their thought was, okay, how do we solve this and create a direct consumer product? And that's how we saw Trulia and Zillow and all these other products. But I think a lot of people overlook how complex or how emotional or how infrequent these transactions are. Right. And because of that, just like any major, massive transaction you do, it's helpful to have a knowledge worker or an expert help you through that process. And that's why we decided to really focus all of our engineering talent, all of our capital towards the real estate practitioner or the brokerage.
Right.
So the pain point, to answer your question, the pain point that I experienced is that my clients were searching on third-party sites. Even once I connected with them, once I had a buyer consultation with them, they were still searching on the other sites.
Right.
And that was a problem for me because while those sites were great at kind of capturing leads, they're not really great for collaboration. or you and me finding a home together
Right.
and communicating about listings. The way it works even today for people who are not using Real Scout is their clients are on Redfin or Realtor.com or Zillow, and they're taking a screenshot and texting it or copying and pasting links and emails. I mean, it's a really broken workflow, and it gives the industry a bad reputation.
Exactly.
Right? Because oh, my real estate agent's so old-fashioned. He's still sending me these things from the MLS, and it's really difficult for me to actually find the home of my dreams.
Right.
So that was the pain point that we were solving initially.
So Real Scout, if I understand it correctly, is so I have a client and I let them go on that site to do all their searching once I get them involved with me.
That's the key, is once you get them involved with you. We're not a website company. In fact, many times we think websites are kind of a waste of money for real estate agents. I mean, think back to the last 12 months of transactions you've done.
Right.
What percentage of them came from an organic, search engine optimized lead or website? Probably zero. I'd be shocked if it's not zero. But in doing this for 7 years and meeting thousands or tens of thousands of agents, it's rare for me to come across an agent or even a brokerage that's doing a meaningful amount of business from their website. And there's some counter examples. So I want to acknowledge that. But for the most part, you should be focusing on the middle of the funnel, which is where a lot of your business comes from.
And it's very expensive too for agents going down that route.
It's expensive, and it's not expensive in the way most people would think in terms of, the average lead costs too much money, because the expensive part is actually creating the systems. So there are some counter examples like Realty Austin, for instance, in Austin, Texas. They do an outstanding job at generating organic traffic and then converting it. But that's their religion. I mean, they put so much time and energy and money into building out that infrastructure. So good for them. Unless you're one of those types of brokerages that really has this running through your veins, then it's probably not something you want to focus on or tout or invest money in. I think it's kind of an all or nothing in my opinion.
It's interesting. No, I think it's great. So in this whole evolution of Real Scout, what's changing right now for the agents? I mean, what do they have to be aware of? Because you're inside the tech side of it, and the agent's having difficulties because they've got all this responsibility. I got to be a tech guy, and I got to do all this stuff. And what's changing so much for the agent right now?
I mean, well, there's two ways to answer that question. I mean, in some ways, a lot is changing, but if you read the headlines, I mean, you'd think the whole, earth is shifting from under your feet. So while there is a lot of venture capital going into some disruptive business models, and there's some new ideas about how to transact homes, those ideas have not yet become mainstream. And so, I don't think this is the right time to panic. I think this is the right time to assess, why are these companies getting so much attention? Why are they soaking up headlines? Why are thought leaders out there talking about this being the future? Because there's probably a thread of truth that runs through these hypotheses. In other words, a company like Open Door, great company, they've raised over $1 billion in capital, and in the markets where they're really flourishing, they're starting to take up a meaningful amount of transactions and market share. So it's something to pay attention to. For the average market in the U.S., most home sellers are not selling their home with one click, right? And so it's important to take an example like Open Door and understand, why is this so attractive? Not only to the media, but to consumers, to customers. Why is this so attractive to them? Why are they submitting so many leads on these sites, trying to figure out how much their home is worth, and even just see, is it possible to sell this home in a shorter amount of time? So there's two things that you can parse from that. The first is, people don't want to be inconvenienced. There's something really nice about the on-demand economy, right? I don't want to, take out my yellow pages and call a taxi. I just want to push a button and have the car arrive. So if I could sell my home with that level of ease, maybe it's unrealistic, maybe it's not the path to choose, but just knowing that option exists is a really, reassuring concept. And the second, so that's, the inconvenience part. The second is certainty, right? And when you talk to a real estate agent today, there's not a lot of certainty around the process. So Mr. Agent, what's my home worth? I don't know. We have to put it on the market and find out. How long is it going to take to sell? I don't know. Could be a week, could be 2 months. And so I think there are things as an industry we can do to increase the level of sophistication through which we approach our clients.
How do we get certainty better though? Because you have all this economic stuff happening in the world.
So I think a big part of it has to do with the type of data that real estate agents have access to. Unfortunately, today, most agents are looking into the past for their answers. In other words, what's my home worth? Well, let's dust off this CMA, and we can tell you what your neighbor's house sold for months ago. That's not a great proxy for what your home is worth today, right? It's just the best one that our industry has access to. What if you had access to real-time home buyer demand data. And we can get into that a little bit later because that's what we do.
Yeah.
But there are ways to have a finger on the pulse of what's happening in today's market, not yesterday's market. The extreme example of certainty would be, yes, offering an instant offer, offering, a cash offer of some sort. And I think some real estate agents picked up on this, many years ago with, hey, if I'll buy your house, I can't sell it. Although there's usually so much fine print around that
I'll buy it for 30% lower than the market value. And of course, we'll
exactly.
Buy it,
So I think it was used, sometimes as a gimmick or as a, lead gen, machine.
Right.
But what you're seeing with companies like OfferPad or Zillow is that, there isn't a whole lot of fine print. And there's been some scrutiny over these models, like can they survive an economic recession or a downturn in the market? And there's some portfolio risk for those companies. But generally speaking, they're well capitalized and they have some smart people that are modeling this all out. Yeah. So how can an agent do this? Well, I'd argue that, save for a few examples like La Macchia in Boston, that's, kind of lining up the capital and doing this on their own, it's probably going to be important that real estate agents partner with one of these major institutions. And I actually, just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Cloud CMA, W&R Studios partnered with Open Door so that when they are giving a CMA, Cloud CMA is probably the most popular, if not the second most popular in the industry.
Right.
If you're offering a CMA to your seller, how great would it be to offer them that second opportunity to sell immediately to Open Door? There are going to be some trade-offs in doing that. And that's where the knowledge worker, the expert at the table is saying, here are the pros and cons of doing this. Yes, you won't have a bunch of strangers, walking through your home on the weekends at open houses, but you may be leaving a little money on the table. And so there are, again, different options for different people. If you are in a situation where you have a desire to have that certainty or that convenience, or there's some life event where you needed to exit that property sooner, then maybe an instant offer is the path to go.
So a highly motivated person would be open to something like that.
I think so.
How do you, Real Scout, now tell me how you guys handle what's happening now with the market. How do you, what is the answer from your perspective for Real Scout?
So as we talked about earlier, the first half of our business is giving a branded search experience to an agent. So an agent doesn't have to, send Zillow links to their clients, because again, once a client and an agent are working together, their needs change, and the workflow changes, and you really need a system that's built around communication and collaboration. So we do that really well. We have about 80,000 agents across the country who have access to Real Scout and who are creating property alerts for their clients. So that's the first half of what we do. Once we got really good at that, what we started to realize is that the data, the behavior from these consumers is really powerful when you reveal that to the agents that represent these buyers. In other words, I can see that my client said they were searching in this market, but now they're searching in that market. So, it's funny because somebody said, well, isn't that, like spying on your client? Yes, you are working with this client. You're working together to find a home. They want you to understand where they're heading and what preferences. They don't have to call you like, hey, I'm thinking about changing my criteria, or I'm just kind of curious about this neighborhood. They want you to know these things. So, that's on, a one-on-one basis. I can now see what my clients are searching for, how their tastes are changing. What's even more powerful is on an aggregate, anonymized basis, I can now see the buyer preferences and behavior across an entire office, an entire brokerage, and an entire market. And that is what we've been making headlines about recently is, we are pulling together these groups of competitive brokerages in a market and encouraging them or enabling them to glean insights from the collective buyer data.
Sharing data.
Yeah, and it's a really incredible, a headline recently called it a black swan moment in real estate, because a lot of people didn't expect that fierce competitors would come together in this way. But they are, because they see the value and they know that this is something no individual brokerage can do alone. It requires cooperation, it requires collaboration. By the way, that's what this industry was built on, right? I mean, the MLS and cooperation. So, we partner with the MLSs to deliver this great product, but in some ways we're the other side of the coin with the MLS, right? The MLS is like a single source of truth for listing data, and we have a really deep understanding of the buyer data. So, Together, an agent can use the MLS and Real Scout to understand both sides of the market.
Is Real Scout more for buyers, or is it a listing tool also?
Well, I think in those ways, it's both, right?
Okay.
For buyer agents, they can use this to captivate their consumers instead of having their clients searching on national portals. And then for a listing agent, they can now reveal all this data so they can walk into their listing appointment with a new story.
Which raises the level of expertise that you have, and then saying, hey, this is this agent, and this is the agent that has this, and kind of like this guy. So there was a question I wanted to ask you about all this change that's going on. And so what do you see the future of all this going on? Because you really got to know, I think the agent has to know some of the stuff. You just can't go in blind. There's sales skill involved. You still got to know how to sell. But what's the future like?
Right. Well, think about it this way. In our industry, we call ourselves brokers, right? And if you look at other industries where brokers exist, like the stock market, for instance, a good stockbroker has a deep understanding of supply and demand. In our industry, we don't, right? I meet with brokers every day. And when I ask them, how many listings they have, they tell me within seconds. If I ask them how many buyers they have, it's crickets, right? They have no idea. No idea. So the future is a broker who truly understands both sides of the market, so they can do their job with more sophistication, with more precision. And to borrow an analogy, popularized by a mentor of mine, Clelia Peters, she believes, and I agree with her, that we're going to see a stratification in real estate brokerage services, and what that means is this may shake out the same way fintech or financial technology did, where you're always going to have the high service, high fee brokers, right? The ones who are delivering a lot of expertise, a lot of hand holding. They're for people who may find comfort in having all their questions answered thoroughly by a person who answers the phone. Then you're going to have kind of the middle ground where you have like, I don't know, maybe like an E-Trade of the financial services industry where you can call and talk to a human, but it's kind of self-serve, right? And that may be like the Redfin equivalent. Right. And then you're going to have the discounters or the folks who are making this like an app that I recommend checking out if you're looking to trade stocks would be Robinhood, which is now becoming very popular. But it's it's free trades, and making a trade is as simple as just swiping. Do you have help? Do you have expert advice? No, not at all. So for the do-it-yourselfers or the people who don't mind taking some risk or putting it all on red, then that could be good for speculative or expert investors. Right. And I think you're going to find that in real estate as well.
So an agent has to find what niche you want to be in, because you really can't do it all. Yeah, and it's going to be hard.
And Greg Schwartz at Zillow recently said, you don't want to be stuck in the messy middle. And what he's trying to say there is, it's okay to be a top-notch agent who's charging, the fee that they deserve. It's okay if you want to be a discounter, but to be in this middle where you kind of represent all parties, and that's what most brokerages do today, right? They're not going to turn down a client. No. They're going to have a very generic, headshot and value prop. I'll help you find the house of your dreams. Okay, but who are you talking to there? Are you looking for a do-it-yourselfer who is going to, complain that you're charging a full commission? Are you doing it for, the top of the market that is willing to pay more to get a little bit more? I think, specializing and standing for something is more important than being a generalist. Or it's a more valuable strategy.
Yeah. Well, you look more definitive, you know what I'm saying? Because most of us sometimes we're so into all these different things that we don't look confident in what we're delivering. So that's what you're saying. So this is exciting. So Andrew, how can they get a hold of you for more questions? Because this has been, I hope you guys enjoyed it, but this has been fantastic.
Sure. So the easiest way to reach out to me is through Instagram. It's Flachneer, AFLACHNER, and you can probably find that posted alongside this video.
Yeah. So guys, take a look, check out Real Scout. If you've got more questions, check out Andrew. Andrew, thanks again.
Hey,
Appreciate
pleasure.
it. Good job.